And what was really great in that conversation was the just culture aspirations. So the policy's been written in that vein, and we got some brilliant feedback from Amy, who is very vocal on the staff side about the work that Fahim and the team have done. Acknowledged the policy was a complete shift in attitude for the trust, and it had taken some time, but it did credit Fahim for his pragmatism on that as well, so that was great news. When we got to February, really fairly challenged recruitment into ICU. When we were talking through nursing recruitment and retention, we've only got 7 beds open due to a lack of staff. Issues such as time to hire too long, especially with specialist nurse training, and the turnaround takes longer, and some legacy impacts of COVID on the ICU staff. People moved on and were scarred from that. So we talked about the hearts and minds approach, and Karen and Ray are now giving it the attention that it needs. We also talked about FTSE, so Freedom to Speak Up. We looked at the quarterly report for Q3, 31 concerns raised, the highest number since reporting began, and it was Awareness Month in October. The Lucy Letby findings were released in October. The Trust did have a conversation about the Lucy Letby findings through a Freedom to Speak Up meeting with the chair, Mel, Karen, and I'm the champion, and obviously Sue as the guardian. And we talked about the anonymous route. So the Trust has got an anonymous route, but not all trusts do. We would rather hear feedback full stop than, you know, that feedback be hidden because there wasn't a channel for anonymous concerns to be raised. 14 of the 31 concerns were around inappropriate attitudes and behaviours. 9 had an element of wellbeing or worker safety. 5 related to patient safety and quality, and 5 related to bullying and harassment. It's that the increase is seen nationally, so the National Guardian's Office has seen that increase as well. Bradford was one of 3 organisations to be chosen by the National Guardian's Office to participate in a short film about the NED and trustee role of in Freedom to Speak Up. So I had the privilege of representing the Trust last Monday in London in a film. We talked about the impact of non-execs in the process, the independence and the ability for senior people to escalate. Yeah, that film will be out shortly. An absolute credit to Sue Franklin, who is the guardian of the Trust and does such a great job for Freedom to Speak Up on the Trust's behalf. Some good data. So turnover, we've seen a decrease month on month since June 22, and we were at 9.48 in January, and that's a drop from December's at 9.73. Absence did drop by 0.01%, but we'll take it because it's against the backdrop of winter illnesses overall. And we talked about the short term on the day absence in nursing and midwifery is incredibly challenging overall. The absence policy and the way that we record absence across the Trust using the Bradford scores that get reviewed, we don't know as an academy whether that's working for the Trust anymore. And there was some good news on staffing. So obviously it is challenging at the minute, but actually the average fill rates over the last 3 months have improved to above 80%. Registered nurse vacancies have reduced to 12.6% in December from 20.5% in April this time last year. We are obviously as a Trust still reporting 160 healthcare support workers vacancies across the wards, but there is a good pipeline to help the Trust to close the gap. And we also had a really thorough presentation about recruitment process improvements. This has been something the Academy's talked about for some time. The slow nature of the process leads to us losing candidates, poor quality communications, complexity of the process, and the challenges and confidence levels in the track system which have been introduced. So there have been some improvements made, there's more to come, but the Trust is now seeing 50% quicker to review and approve vacancies. So there has been some impact of that, but certainly more to come on that as well. Further system improvements around onboarding experience next following the recruitment improvements. broadening the talent pool with entry level, more apprenticeships, refugee support and volunteer to career in plan as well. So lots of really good initiatives to that. And I'll just leave it.
Thanks, Karen. You've covered an awful lot of ground in those meetings. Any questions for Karen? Okay, thank you. I was going to go straight to the thing, but do we need to check the press outside? Yeah. Is there? We'll just go straight. Yeah. Hi. Hi, Kes. Thank you for joining us. So, and we've got a presentation for us. If we could take about 10 minutes to go through the presentation, and then I know people will have questions for you, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, point it here.
Oh, into that. Oh, okay. Morning, everyone. It's still morning, isn't it? Yes. Great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity for coming to the Trust Board today to give you an update in relation to equality, diversity and inclusion. So in terms of the presentation then, the purpose of this presentation is to provide an annual update to the board around our progress and also including our future direction and progress in particular on the EDI strategy that we launched last year. So I just want to remind colleagues very quickly of the EDI landscape, and as you can see, that is very complex. So a lot of this is our contractual and legal obligations in terms of some of the activity that we need to have in place, but also very clearly evidence our progress on a range of this equality framework. And I'm really pleased to say that over the last few years, we've gained quite a lot of momentum on a lot of these areas, in particular our approach to the workforce race equality standards, the workforce disability equality standard, our focus on gender pay gap, etc., which is putting us in a very unique position in relation to where we really need to focus on in the coming years, really. So I just wanted to share that with you. Very quickly, the public sector equality duty. This is something that we always have in mind within the team when we are focusing on delivering equality, diversity and inclusion. I remember, I've been in this field for quite a long time, and many years ago, having a statement around equality of opportunity was a great tick in the box, and it was fine, and organisations were okay in doing that. Now, the clue is in the language and within this general duty, really. This is about eliminating discrimination, harassment and victimisation, but more importantly, it's allowing public sector organisations to advance their approaches to equality, diversity and inclusion. And in my latter slides, you will see some of the focus that we've had over the few years around advancing equality, diversity and inclusion at Bradford Teaching Hospitals. Oops.
Yeah, you can.
So this slide is just to give an overview of the 9 different protected characteristics. And again, I wanted to highlight this, that this is a complex agenda. This is not about putting different groups in different hierarchies of order. You know, the Equality Act, what it did was it harmonised all previous equalities legislation, brought it into one single piece of equalities legislation, where the focus, in my opinion, really has to be on that intersectionality, inclusion and belonging. So our approach to equality, diversity and inclusion, first of all, I'm just mindful that we've got some new faces around the table, so it's important to share this. So we've got a team delivering, facilitating equality, diversity and inclusion, and that's my little team based in Daisy Bank, where we've got responsibility in facilitating the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda. We've got our wonderful strategic Equality Diversity Council, which was set up in the midst of COVID by the recommendation from Mel about, you know, what is our role around health inequalities and what are we doing around some of the existing inequalities within the organisation. And that's really given us momentum. It's showing demonstrable leadership. It's bringing people, key individuals around that table where it's really allowing us to identify, to discuss our equality, diversity and inclusion priorities. That's not just within BTHFT, but you know, what's happening regionally, what's happening nationally, and we've had some great presentations at that Equality Council, whereby, you know, we're really able to align some of our ED&I activity. On a regular basis, we are required to attend People Academy, given our focus on some of the people reports and the people objectives. So regularly we attend People Academy, which is chaired by Karen, around RAISE, DARES, you know, and a whole range of other activity, where I'm really pleased to say that some of our action plans have received that national momentum, you know, from some of our colleagues nationally within NHSI as well. I've said previously as well, we can't shy away from equality, diversity and inclusion. We know we've got the diversity within Bradford, both within our patients, but also our very diverse workforce, which is fantastic and which is great. However, the focus has to be on inclusion and belonging. You know, how are we all getting that sense of inclusion and belonging? And just very quickly, yesterday, as I was walking back from the prayer room, I walked over to Daisy Bank with another colleague, another Muslim colleague, and he was just sharing his experience of what the Ramadan ethos and the focus that we've currently got, and what's that doing for him as a Muslim young man within the organisation. And he actually told me that actually every time I go in from one department to the other and I'm seeing all these posters and displays, that's given me a real sense of belonging. I just thought I'd share that because it was quite a powerful little interaction there that I had with the individual. Without engagement, consultation and involvement, in my opinion, we can't be doing equality, diversity and inclusion without that. Now, over the last few years, we've really done a lot of work about really giving some focus and avoiding our diverse staff. For some of the work that we've done with our staff equality networks, giving them facility time to ensure that they've got the time to be able to influence in the EDI agenda. We've given them protected time as well, and also some funding in order for them to raise the profile of equality, diversity and inclusion. And some of that work has been recognised nationally, certainly in terms of the work we've done around disability and also around race as well. So going forward, I think we really need to keep that momentum. Just looking at the patient engagement and experience strategy earlier on, which we, you know, within the team heavily influenced that by recognising that actually Bradford, we are a very diverse organisation. We serve some really diverse patients and communities. So engaging with them patients and communities is also paramount as well. And equality impact assessments, you know, the amount of impact assessments we get in our inbox tells me that people are actually getting it. People are actually completing equality impact assessments, which we're able to identify negative and positive impact on anything that we are developing, initiating or reviewing as well. So this is last year, this time, I remember coming in and saying we're developing our EDI strategy. This is our EDI strategy, 5 equality strategic objectives, which I won't go into detail. You know, the sort of overviews are there in terms of each area. And I'm really pleased to say again that the strategy is gaining momentum. It provides us with focus and it's really helping us meet our contractual obligations and our legal obligations. I think it's the first EDI strategy that the Bradford Teaching Hospital has had. And certainly when I'm going out to departments, it's a hook for me when I'm talking to managers and leaders about their role in ensuring that we are delivering and implementing our EDI strategy. So going on to our progress. So as I've already said, we continue to ensure that the organisation is compliant with the whole of that landscape that I shared earlier. We've launched our EDI strategy, as I've just mentioned. We launched it last year, and that's obviously gaining quite lots of engagement. We are in the process at the moment in terms of getting out to various different CSUs and departments by talking to them departments and getting them to think about their local EDI plans. And where we've gone into departments like maternity, like psychology, IT, I know we've been as well, it's really gaining that momentum. It's really sort of identifying what actions we need to be looking at in some of our wider departments as well. And last but not least, we've done lots of work in terms of empowering our managers around EDI. I think, I'm going to be honest, not everybody gets EDI, and sometimes managers really need that focus. So we've developed a half-a-day EDI training course, and we've made it very clear that it's not about the Equality Act. We're not killing people with PowerPoint slides. It's real case studies, real life case studies, looking at some of the EDI impact and implication on patients, but also our wider staff. And some of the feedback that we're getting from managers around that is, we've never had anything like this before. This is really helping. This has empowered me. You know, where we've got busy departments and you've got managers managing complex teams and diverse teams, then managers need some empowerment and need some support. And I think walking away from some of the tools that we hand out, managers are really finding them really beneficial. We've reviewed and refreshed our trust's approach to dealing with conflict, bullying, harassment, that kind of activity. And I'm pleased to say we've replaced it with respect, civility and resolution. And the clues in the words there. Conflict is inevitable in any organisation, but how we deal with that conflict is really important. So we've set up an internal mediation service. We've reviewed our staff advocates in terms of how we're really trying to work closely with colleagues in HR as well about how we can really focus on nipping things in the bud. Yes, not everything doesn't need to go down formal route, but where things can be dealt with informally, I think we have a bit of a role to play there. In terms of our focus on tackling health inequalities, a massive area of work. Again, the strategy, the development of the Equality Diversity Council has really helped shape some of our priorities in tackling health inequalities as an acute hospital. We can't tackle everything in terms of health inequalities, but as an acute hospital, yes, we can. And so colleagues, Naveed and other colleagues in performance and strategy are really working alongside us, where we're getting out into departments and getting departments to carry out their health equity assessment processes, which is really allowing them to look at, you know, what it is that is creating inequalities within their departments, and what, more importantly, what actions they can focus on in tackling some of them health inequalities. Our achievements then. So a few years ago, we set ourselves a target of having a 35% workforce that matches our communities that we serve. I'm really pleased to say we've exceeded that target. We are now at 40% of having a diverse representative workforce. Yes, we've got work to do in some of our senior level roles in how we instill some of that, but we've exceeded that target. Last year, the Nursing Times Award, 2023, we got the award for Best Employer for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. That's not to say we've got it all sorted on ED&I, but that was for our infrastructure that we've put in place over the last few years. where we are really focusing on embedding and mainstreaming equality, diversity and inclusion. Significant improvements are showing in our staff survey, which I'm sure Fahim will be sharing with you shortly. Again, when we look at some of them EDI scores, they're significantly improved. So some of the impact of the work that we are doing at the moment, I feel is really having that positive impact, which I'm really, really pleased about. We've also, I've already talked about the mediation service, which is really helping, but also our wider focus in really raising the profile of equality, diversity and inclusion. And some of the events that we're involved in, the planning team, they are creating dialogue. They are creating conversations that people have been uncomfortable to have in the past. And that dialogue is creating momentum. It's putting us in a position where we are co-producing some of our plans. You know, these RES and DES action plans, they're not developed in isolation. They are developed in partnership with our staff equality networks, through their lenses, through their lived experiences. And that's really, really important to continue focusing on that. We've recently carried out the Equality Delivery System 2, which again is a massive contractual obligation. It's got, it comes with 3 domains. 2 domains are about leadership and workforce. The domain 1 is about the services that we provide. So we identified respiratory as a service, given that it's aligned with the core 20 plus in terms of the health inequalities agenda. And through the 3 services, we identified sleep service, lung cancer and asthma. And I'm really pleased to say, on domain 1, we worked with other neighbouring organisations like Airedale, Community Mental Health Trust, Bradford ICD office. So with my other hat on as the EDI lead for ICD, I was in a unique position to be able to coordinate that on a district-wide level. And some of the feedback that we've had for the domain 2 and 3 in terms of the engagement event was, wow, this is brilliant. And I think some members around the table were also present that day as well. And I think staff, we had about over 50 staff who attended that event, where they got first-hand about what activity we've currently got in place around workforce, health and well-being and inclusive leadership. So our rating for that was achieving, which is absolutely fantastic. In terms of the workforce and the leadership one, some of it also focused on excelling, given some of the activity of work that we've done again over the last 3 years. Now, this slide is really there to remind board of we've got work to do in terms of the National EDI Improvement Plan. And I think it has to be our focus over the next 12 months. That comes with 6 high impact actions. And there's one first action on there is about measurable objectives on ED&I for chairs, chief executives and board members. And I think we need to grasp that, and we really need to do something really meaningful where we've got some real effective objectives for our senior leaders in the organisation. And the other 6 impact actions, again, we're already focusing on some of these, but it's going to be really our work programme over the next 12 months. So reflections over the last 12 months then, very quickly. I know I can talk for England and put together, but I will be very quick. Great progress over the last 12 months, you know, working with our diverse staff and engaging with our staff across the organisation. I believe our staff equality networks are thriving. They are in a position where they are influencing equality, diversity and inclusion. As I've said, any actions within our strategy have not been developed in isolation. They have been co-produced with our staff. We have a clear focus on tackling health inequalities. And again, as a reminder, I think we really need to be clear on what our role is as an acute hospital and what are them key areas that we really need to be focusing on. Our efforts have been reflected in some of the external recognition that we've received. I've already mentioned the staff survey, and Fahim will be sharing that shortly. So some clear evidence of improvements, and EDI cannot be done in isolation. Again, EDI is an evidence-based activity, and you know, that's what I've always very mindful of in basically focusing on equality, diversity and inclusion. I think in terms of next steps, we've proactively worked towards improving our performance on resin days, certainly looking at what we can be doing more in terms of ensuring that we've got good representation levels at them senior leadership levels. We need to continue to develop our approaches to civility and respect in the workplace, and that's about professional behaviours in the workplace. You know, our staff need to be happy at work, they need to be well at work, and it's really important that they are empowered to understand what our approaches are around civility and respect within the workplace. And some of the things there I've already mentioned in terms of nipping issues in the bud at an early stage, really focusing on the zero tolerance approach to harassment and bullying, and a proactive focus on the EDI national plan again. Next steps as well, reviewing our approaches to root out racism, and again colleagues will remember some of the recent reports that have been presented by Ali Jan Hader around our approaches to root out racism, and you know, the recent report that has been launched, Too Hot to Handle. I think we really need to be clear on what our response is going to be on that going forward. I think if there's an area of development and if there's something that keeps me up at night, it's about our focus on cultural competency and humility within the organisation. Now, if I could and if I had the capacity, I would be doing this training myself. But because of capacity, we really need to understand how we can get this training delivered across the organisation, especially our frontline departments, around cultural competency and humility. Focus on staff experience and retention, so things like exit interviews and onboarding. On the EDI national plan, there's a high impact action there around international staff. So again, we will be looking at that in the coming months. Renewed efforts to improve gender equality in the organisation. Our gender pay gap tells us that we do have an underrepresentation of women in senior leadership roles. We had a fantastic event earlier in the week. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Karen Dover as well for attending. And you know, at that event, which was great, lots of attendance and lots of focus there in staff wanting to work with us. My last slide, I'm pleased to say, continue with our active involvement, collaboration as Actors One. EDS 22 is a clear example of how we've done that and how we've gained that relationship building and engagement, not just internally within Bradford, but externally of Bradford as well. Ensure our EDI agenda is aligned to local, regional and national priorities. ICB is currently in the process of developing their EDI strategy, and I'm all over it, making sure that there's alignment and coordination as well. And last but not least, I think given the work that we've done, at least over the last 3 to 4 years, that's put us in a really unique position where I'm really keen, Mel and other colleagues, in developing a conference. Let Bradford showcase what we've done, how we've done it, and not that just be a BTHFT, but bringing our place organisations on board, because I think we've really got lots to showcase, but also lots to learn about as well. And that is my last slide, isn't it? I hope it's,
Yes, thank you.
yes.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take any questions, comments. Thank you.
First reflection. So I think we met a week ago, didn't we?
We did, yes.
And our passed across a few times since then. And what strikes me is the energy, the enthusiasm and the passion that we're putting into EDI. So thank you. Your work has been amazing. I hear you loud and clear on the EDI objectives, and I will take away an action if we can minute that for this meeting, just to check that we have got EDI objectives across the board table included in it. If we haven't, then we'll get that sorted. And I think we have it, the conference on really good.
But our annual Thrive Leadership Conference, which is planned to take place in September, and we haven't conferred on this, but the theme of it is celebrating diversity and championing inclusion. So last year it was for the leader in everyone. This year we've already agreed in terms of our speakers, etc., that is the theme of the annual leadership conference. Okay, so it's slightly different in the hat than we had in mind, but I think we can pull two things off together.
So again, let's take that as an action to make sure that we're working together on that.
Yeah,
okay.
fantastic.
All right, that's brilliant. Any other questions or comments for Kez?
Thank you, Kez, for the really detailed presentation. A separate question, you refer to the National EDI plan. Do we have a local plan sitting beneath that? Or a clear measurable in there to...
So we've got the EDI strategy with the 5 strategic objectives, which I believe does align to the National EDI plan and some of the activity that we've already said we're going to be delivering on. So there is some synergy there, absolutely, between our strategy and the EDI plan. I've also mentioned the ICB are currently in the process of developing an EDI strategy as well, which again, there's going to be some clear alignment with the National EDI plan as well. And I think that's really important, because with ED&I, you can go off on a tangent if it's not aligned, because there's so many different priorities. And that's why some of our conversations with NHS England has been that alignment and coordination has to be there. And that's what NHS England have been given a whole range of feedback from other EDI leads around that as well.
And from the EDIs of last year, you have clear measurables that we measure progress against and reporting that.
Yes, absolutely. So things like the RES and DES action plans, we've got gender equality action plans, all of them have some very clear milestones within there, and their annual action plans as well. I wish there weren't annual action plans, because I'm not sure how much you can actually achieve in a 1 year. And again, conversation is happening with NHS England about maybe thinking about 3-year action plans, which at least give us the delivery time and at least measure the impact in terms of the difference we are making.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Yeah, thank you, because we've met in other time before, haven't we? And that was a really excellent presentation. Thank you. So clear a lot of food for thought. One thing that popped into my mind, working with EDI space as well, is that terminology is always changing and it's contested. What's the right word? What's the wrong word? I was really interested in the change from the harassment and bullying policy to respect, civility and resolution. We had an earlier conversation where we were talking about negative perceptions and things, and I can see that there's a turnaround to what we should be doing in terms of prevention. But harassment is something that we are, as you said, the Equality Act is unlawful. So how do we, I guess, how did it come to change the wording, and what's the difference in the policy from previously that matters?
So I think, again, having a bullying and harassment policy, it's really negative language, I think. And I think shifting away from that language to civility, respect and resolution, it's really helped us identify different behaviours, I suppose, within the organisation as well. And I use a bit of analogy. There's clumsy behaviour, inappropriate behaviour and completely unlawful behaviour. And as professionals and individuals, we all need to apply our professional judgment to the behaviours that we are witnessing or seeing. And this is where I think it's really enabled us to do exactly that in terms of the policy, with focus on really getting parties to understand, because sometimes you can get really stuck in dealing with parties whereby, they're just not wanting to shift, but to go down formal route. So we've got to really be careful about, okay, if you want to go down the form and look, what are you really going to be achieving from that? Where's the learning? Where's that just culture element that we're really keen to develop and evolve as well? So I think in policies such as this policy, language is really, really important. And, you know, sharing that information with a wide range of people, using some of that policy is really important as well. So I hope, have I answered your question there?
Thank you. I suppose to people, the other question would be, does staff know, if you were unfortunately experiencing that, you might think, or also you need to, what's the bullying and harassment policy? You might not think, where's the respectability and resolution policy? So how, I suppose, what's the messaging around the word change?
So the messaging has allowed the work we've done around our approach to disability at work and some of the tools and the information and the guidances that we've developed is really helping us support in that as well. Really.
Louise's training as well. So the trust has got a desire to train everybody around disability and what it means and the change in language and the change in culture particularly. So I think for him, last time presented, it's going to take around 2 years to get everybody through, but it is in line with the just culture that the trust is trying to aspire to.
So I just, we've got 2 quick points on the ball and then for the.
Yeah, just one thread that I know is very common, which hasn't brought out necessarily, is neurodiversity. And again, we're all keeping our fingers crossed. We've got an apprenticeship of the year nomination in the Health Awards, and that's closed, unfortunately. And then the other point, again, it's early for us to look at 24 hours ago. There was an announcement about the NHS responding to miscarriages and to accommodating leave around people who have miscarriages and their partners. So again, I assume going forward somewhere between the failing and case triangle, that will also be a thread that as an organisation we need to respond to that. For the opportunity learning is that it also seems to be a bit pushed early in the first thing I would smash that.
So I think, Louise, just going back to your question, what we are doing is, this is all about triangulating what we're doing across these in terms of our workforce. So you will see some good policies shifted hugely in terms of our approach to being just a learning culture. It's all about resolution as opposed to necessarily being a punitive process. So what's the outcome that we want to achieve from this? And that outcome is very much about learning, change of behaviour and actually improvement. And this lends itself to that, because actually the whole wording around harassment and bullying made it very confrontational. What we are doing is looking at it from a different lens around, okay, there is a breakdown and we have an organisation of maybe 10,000 staff. There will be breakdowns in relationship. How do we then actually focus on resolving those issues at the very earliest opportunity we can, and looking at this from a learning perspective rather than being a punitive approach to something. And it is trying to align all of that in terms of our workforce approach.
Right, fabulous, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. It's been brilliant presentation, really look forward to it and looking forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone really for all your continued support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, brilliant, thank you. So I know that we're joined by a colleague. We are just running probably about 10 minutes late, so I don't know if you want to come back or whether you're more than welcome to sit and listen.
Okay, I think I will just wait just in case.
That's fine, that's fine. Now, for the survey, we probably haven't got enough time to do it the justice that we want to do. So if you want to take us through the results in this public forum, then we can pick up again what we're meeting in April.
Okay, so I'll make this brief. But staff survey, just in terms of context, I think you need to remember the context of when the staff survey was done. It was done around the same time that we had some really negative press nationally in terms of the departure of our previous chair.
That adds context because that was also off the back of a very long period of industrial action in our workforce, was years throughout that. So remembering that context in terms of our results is really important, I think. So what I have done is I've given you some results there which look at the national picture and how we compare. So away from that last column, the national average is the green column there, and then we in terms of actually acute trust, it's the ones in red. So acute trusts are scoring lower than the national average across the country. And if you look at our scores there, we are above national average on effectively everything. So, and in terms of actually results, this is, you know, as an acute trust, under significant pressure and challenge that we've had, it's really amazing results. So I won't go into the great detail in terms of actually where all the rest of the indicators because of timing, but if you look at diversity and equality and inclusion on the next slide, you will see that actually, again, we're above the national average, we're above where, you know, the top of the trusts are finished, and we're making good progress. There is a slide at the end that will show you in terms of progress from the previous year, but I think it's really important to highlight that. There are two areas that I do want to highlight where actually we've not quite measured up in terms of comparing it to national averages, and that is around support for work-life balance. So we're slightly under the national average, and also work pressure. So if you look at the average is 5.34, we're at 5.32. So there is something about a tired workforce that's coming through this for me. I've then looked at the compassionate culture questions that I've highlighted in this slide here, and you will see that actually we are above average again. And on the next slide, race equality question. You'll see here that actually the percentage of staff that trained for harassment, bullying, and abuse of staff in the last 12 months has significantly declined for our minority staff, and it's positive trajectory in terms of actually where we are heading. So if you see from 2021, we continuously improving in terms of scores on that. And the workforce equality standard, again, essentially staff believe that the organisation provides equal opportunities for career progression or promotion is actually increasing. So for, especially for our minority staff, it's significantly increasing in terms of people believe they have a fair opportunity in terms of progressing their career across the organisation. And then I guess these questions are important. Staff experience on discrimination, which I've talked about for line managers as well, again, increasing significantly. And I'll move on to the final slide. And this shows you a picture of how we are performing. So last year we had a staff survey which was hugely positive. We've made significant progress, and we were one of the most improved exemplar people's homicides. And from that survey to this survey, we have made significant improvements across the board, apart from one area which is the channel ones, and that we've made improvements in that. But in all the other areas, we've made significant improvement within the farming period. And I think in the context of what we've dealt with, I think it's just an absolutely amazing results that we've had. And it just shows and demonstrates the sort of culture that we are creating across the trust. So you've heard a lot about what we're doing around ECI, but this shows actually what we're doing as an organisation across the board for all our groups. And I think I've been to the question.
Thank you. First of all, I'm so sorry that we went to the rushing exciting because it is so fabulous. You know, I've taken some time to read in detail and it's really amazing. So for whom on a personal note, I'd like to thank you for your leadership through this period as well. You've been in the interim HR position, and it's been absolutely amazing work that you've done. We've got Karen.
I'd just like to second that, because Fahim, you've done a sterling job over the last 12 months. And I just want to highlight a couple of things, and I've got a couple of areas that I think we need to think about. One is increased year on year across all dimensions. So when we get, you pulled out the highlights, but when you get into the survey, and I've got the whole lot here, and I did study it, you have smashed every single dimension has gone up. And statistically significant, which is brilliant. The bit that I think the trust needs to focus on is response rate. So again, it's gone up year on year, 43%, but that's less than half of people across the trust responding to it. It could be even better if more people would be encouraged to do that. The raising concerns bit does concern me as Freedom to Speak Up, Ned. I don't think we've got an issue in speaking up. I think we've got an issue in people having confidence that when they speak up, there's action going to be taken. And that was what I read through the survey. So the importance of listening and following up for me is, and I've said this to our Freedom to Speak Up quarterly meetings, is something I think we've just got to address.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Sophie.
Thanks for I think brilliant results overall. It's really good to see the percentages decreasing the area where we recognise it decreased. Obviously, still from the negative, but it's still worrying about the comparison when we have to now start suffering discrimination for the user and non-ethnic. So I think, like I said, overall, brilliant results, but we do need to make sure that happens in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think what I'm trying to show here is actually making good progress. We're not done. So we're far from where we need to be. We know as a trust that actually representation at the very senior levels is also an issue for us. So I fully agree. I think you're right to highlight it. I think what we will be having is this will go to people academy. There will be a deeper discussion that people academy on the staff survey. And in the April people academy, there will be an action plan, staff survey action plan that I will be bringing back to people academy to discuss and agree then to our focus moving forward and what we need to be concentrating on. And that point around how do we get better engagement is very important. And I think the national response rate is about 46% average. We're at 43. Ideally, where we need to be is 50 plus, because that's more than half of our workforce telling us that. And the greater that number, the more accurately reflective the staff surveys in terms of how it feels to be an employee here within our organisation.
Yeah. Can I suggest that once you've got the action plan agreed, we bring that back to the next building centre? This would be great to just have that in the main track ourselves.
Would it also be possible to get a demographic breakdown for completion so that we understand the demographic of who completed the survey? Put that out and we can have some confidence on that in criticism.
Yeah, just one quick point on that, and I'm sure it will come up as part of those discussions around action plans. But be really useful as part of those actions that we put in particular areas like the one that Sophia just highlighted, whether there's an opportunity for us to perhaps survey ourselves much sooner than the national survey, because I think there's something about the fact that we wait for the year to happen and then it's a number of months after. And is there an opportunity throughout? Because I think that message back to staff is really important in terms of we've heard it, we've seen it, we're doing something about it, and actually we're checking up on it and we're presenting it back. So I think it's part of that action plan if we can perhaps consider that.
Yeah.
So there is a national pulse survey, quarterly pulse survey. Our engagement with that has been poor, I'm honest. So there is significant work to do to make sure that we are increasing the prominence of that survey, so that we are able to get as it states, as it's name check on the organisation. I think that's really important. So the next civility programme board that we've got at the end of this month, we're very much focused on staff feedback and how we increase engagement. So the programme of work and civility programme board for the next 12 months is how do we increase engagement with that pulse survey, so we continue to get a live response from the organisation and our workforce on how does it feel, are we doing things right, are we making improvements, and if we're not, we can at least change things. If we're not learning how to do it.
Yeah, okay, that all sounds good. All right,
One more tiny point, sorry. One of the, and I'm a bit of a broken record on this, but one of the really powerful ways of making people feel involved and included, which is an area in the survey that needs to increase is we said we did. So getting people involved in the action plan, not a top-down kind of approach.
Okay, right, thank you. I'm going to move us on. So Louise, do you want to give us your report and then we'll bring us on? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got two reports from 31st of January, 28th of February. Some of the things that I was going to alert you brought to the attention of the board. So from 31st of January, I think perhaps speaking to what he was saying, we were hearing from the midwifery and neonatal services staff about the increase of pressures on them, unit diverts, staffing, a number of different things, and that the staff themselves were feeling quite burnt out at that period with a low morale. Karen stepped out, so she won't not answer to that, but she might touch on that in her report. I mean, hopefully the NHS ESU's visit may have had a positive impact on morale for colleagues. Hello, very colleagues that we're speaking about. So in relation to the one thing that I need to bring to attention of the board that is in the report, which is in relation to perinatal death, there was one surveillance case was missed on the 1 month completion deadline due to an IT issue. I think it was a system down issue. The lost file, okay. So Embrace to perform the external review of cases. NHS resolution have been notified, and NHS resolution asks that this be reported to the board, but I advise that this will be taken into consideration with regard to considering full compliance. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add to that.
We do feel that it will be accepted because the standards actually have already been advised that the standard for year 6 has changed, and that's surveillance element of it for babies of under 24 weeks wouldn't even be considered. So we've got fingers crossed that it won't affect the submission.
Thank you very much. We had a really excellent annual report from the palliative care team and all the work that they are doing. There is one area where we don't provide 7-day cover from the palliative care team, and that's doesn't cover use of hospital, and this is on the risk register. But there's a business case under discussion. I don't know how far that is under discussion at the moment. Provide resource to support that to make sure, therefore, that we have 7-day cover over all areas of the trust. Of note, that's a new clinical nurse specialist role with a special interest in knowledge of South Asian culture. It's about cultural competency when Kes was here, and the religious needs of our population to provide culturally sensitive care at the end of life for members of the community. Just asked to note the monthly stillbirth positions, maternal and neonatal deaths, and HEIs. Of note, the reduction in the rate of stillbirths from 2022. So an adjusted rate of 4.2 per thousand, down from 5 per thousand births, and a reduction of 5 in total, a reduction of 5 stillbirths in total in 2023 from 2022. We had a really good report from the patient experience. A question was raised about, I think it was Karen, about potential bias in selecting cases, about choosing patient stories, and the need to have more inclusive selection criteria to involve the Spark team, who were here again. And so standard operating procedure for patient stories is going to be undertaken. Is there anything else? Oh yes, okay. The infection prevention and control quarterly report was presented. We are compliant in 51 out of the 54 standards of the IPC Board Assurance Framework, and partially compliant in the remaining 3, and work is ongoing to ensure that we are fully compliant there. So the Academy received good assurance on that. With the report from the 28th of February, there's a new risk again that was touched on earlier, which is about the delays in processing histopathology samples, and I see raised that point about, as I fear raised the point about it being due to staffing levels as opposed to delays within the processing system. So that is now, there was a conversation about reducing the risk in relation to the gynecology risk in terms of histopathology, and as was discussed, I think there was ongoing conversation about whether that was reduced only because of the impact on the number of population, not because of the thing of itself. It's a less risk. So that is ongoing, but at the moment the delays in processing histopathology samples is standing at 16. We had a really good presentation, a very thorough presentation, discussion from our mortuary manager in relation to the Mason and Tunbridge Wells NH Trust inquiry, which you will know about. To note that as the board that we meet the majority of the HTA standards in relation to our in relation to the inquiry, and with two, I think there was two major, one minor shortfalls, and that was relating to consent training and bridge capacity within our mortuaries, but the work is ongoing to rectify the shortfalls. But in relation to the majority of the points that were raised in Mason and Tunbridge Wells, we are absolutely correct. It's a fantastic, very thorough presentation. Julie. Yeah. 15 Steps Assurance Programme, a really great presentation from Nazar Butt. And we had a conversation about, particularly in relation to non-exec directors like myself, in terms of getting out into the system to meet patients and staff, and the value and the kind of the gift, I suppose, that these things bring back into the organisation in terms of these type of initiatives where people are going out free to ask questions, free to observe, bring ideas for improvement back, and of course issues of concern. And I was so impressed by it. I was moved to volunteer to take part in the programme. Not just because of that, I just think it's really important. As nurse, I've not had that chance to make that opportunity. I think that's something that I would recommend to all med colleagues, new and existing, if they are able. I think the other things have been reported, and I know that Karen's going to talk more about the assurance. If there's any questions around those reports? Any questions, anybody? No?
Just a comment, Chair, because we've spoken about what Liz has alluded to in this board, getting out and about, and previously we've spoken about an initiative that we'll trial called Reach In, Reach Out, which I know a number of colleagues around the table have embraced, and we are now rolling that out. I think what I'd like us to think about is giving the Reach Out some structure using the 15 steps approach, potentially where it pertains to members of the board, and doing the Reach In bit, which is essentially the same thing, going and looking and seeing and understanding what it's like out of the organisation. So I think that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I very much want to see us out and about. I think that's a really important part of being an effective non-exec. So yeah, another thing on the to-do list to work through. But yeah, that's great. Thank you, Louise. Okay, and welcome to colleagues Sarah, Sam, and Anisha. Karen, you introduce it?
I am going to, so I'm going to do it slightly differently today. So in the spirit of the board reading, there's a bundle of papers. I know you will have all read them. We've put a little slide pack together, the highlights, but we want to focus on two main things. One is the suite of neonatal integrity assurance reports that have been received, and Sam's here, and one of the recommendations of that report was for Sam to come to board. He's really pleased about that. I'm going to ask Anisha to present that report because it's her report, and Anisha is the Director of Nursing for Specialised Commissioning who led that inspection. And we're then going to talk about the reduction in syllabus very briefly, because that is also positive story and then open for any questions. So over to Felicia.
Okay, can I just note as well, because we need to respect prayers, that our hard stop for this item will have to be 12:55.
Yeah.
Okay, is that
Perfect, thank you.
all right? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we can. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yes, really pleased to be here today to feedback on the joint quality assurance visit with ourselves from direct commissioning, along with the network and the ICBs. I know some colleagues who were on the visit is here today. So once I've presented the overview, then we can come in with any additions. So there are two reports. There's a full report about 62 pages, and then there's a summary, which is about 5 pages. And I'll just talk to the summary and hope you'd have looked at the comprehensive report. So I'll go into the report now. So as I mentioned, it's a joint assurance visit between key stakeholders. And the overarching purpose of the visit was to gain assurance on the quality and safety of the services delivered within the neonatal unit. And it was also be a source of commissioners' assurance to ensure that we continue to be aware that there is good quality service at the unit at ARI. However, there were no concerns raised previously regarding the service. It was more regarding the governance and escalation of the incidents, and that was also reviewed. And I'm sure we'll have some update regarding the tabletop and findings, most of which aligns to the findings that we've done with the clinical visit. And so we wanted to clarify that unit was providing high quality care. So we met with various staff on the unit within the department. We were warmly welcomed and escorted around the unit. In terms of the overall summary of the visit, I think it went well. There was clear safety culture demonstrated, and teams were responsive to incidents, and there were governance processes in place which we found to be clear in terms of how it moved from board up to board and the feedback down. And it was an ethos around learning and no blame culture. We could see that the department had ongoing processes in place to act on previous learning, even from times like 2 years ago. So they were still talking about the things that they have embedded. Found that the staff were enthusiastic and passionate about the care, and the unit itself and staff were so excited and happy to tell us about all the work they were doing within the unit, and we saw the evidence of that during the day. So in terms of the challenges, we know all providers have challenges. We found that the department and the trust were aware of the challenges within that they were dealing with, and they had processes in place to address them. And some of those are mentioned within the report itself. So we found lots of areas of good practice throughout the business, and these were based on things that we heard, what we see, and previous evidence that we received. So the unit itself was really clean and tidy, welcoming. We saw clear evidence of processes to comply with infection control on entry, things like hand washing. Colleagues were reminded verbally to wash their hands, as well as there were physical signs in various format within the entry. Mentioned the safety culture, and I've mentioned the bit around learning and escalating, and we saw that process during our visit. So in terms of some really good practice, additional things that I want to highlight is that we found that although we know all areas have workforce challenges, we found that the department were really clear on what those were. They were clear on the staffing establishment, and I was really impressed by the neonatal workbook and induction booklet that's in Appendix 3 in the report, that they were using to make sure new neonatal staff were inducted well, and that they were moving up from new starters up to sort of more complex roles up to the top of their license. So that's really good. And I think that's something that we can share with other hospitals who are trying to develop their neonatal staff. Other things that we saw that they were learning and process being embedded regarding was things like fire prevention, and also ensuring that the estate is developed. And I think there's a separate point regarding that. We found that the matron was very proactive and visible, and he mentioned various things of and ways of how we made sure he was visible clinically, including having his unit on the ward or the unit, which is really good. So I've mentioned the staffing models. In terms of psychological support, we saw that there were good processes in place for staff and for families and carers, considering that it can be really touching when there's incidents within such a specialist unit. We saw that there was psychological support as well as palliative care arrangement in place, and good education and support. So in terms of the recommendations, we didn't find anything new that needed escalating or needed implementing, but there were 3 processes that we thought we really wanted to pull out, just to say, we know you're doing this, but please continue, because we think these are really good practices. So the first one was the implementation of the electronic patient record, EPR, and we know that once we have good joined up electronic processes, it makes things more seamless. So I've contacted colleagues with regional and national colleagues who can provide any additional support regarding EPR as required. And really impressed about the plan for parent accommodation. And we've said, please continue that, and you'll liaise with us if there's support required in any way. And we know that the head of department intends to present that board. And we said, please continue that and formalize it as much as possible, just to ensure that the head of department is able to bring the fine details to board as required. So in terms of the overall findings from the visit, we found that we were quality assured. We found that the BRI neonatal unit was providing safe, high quality care to patient families and service users. We fed this back to various different committees and boards which agreed, including the Bradford Improvement Group, West Yorkshire Assistant Quality Group, regional quality groups, and it's really good to be here to present it today and gain any additional feedback from colleagues within the meeting and who were on the visit. So I think those are the main things, and you have so we can open the question on this item whenever you're ready. So over to you.
Thanks very much, Alicia. Sorry, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Amazing results for the trust. I know it's something that's been a key priority for many months. So well done to everybody who's worked in the team. Can you pass our thanks back to everybody, please? Anisha and Sam. Thank you. Anybody got any questions on that? Okay, all right.
Can I whiz on to the rest of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so I think as we walked in, I've obviously heard Louise giving her account of what's been through QPSA. So unless there are any specific questions on that, I'll skip. And Anisha's just covered the elements about the assurance visit. So there were another couple of things in there just to triangulate that level of assurance that's certainly been applied to both maternity and neonatal services in the last few months. And boards have already been appraised of one of those, which was the LMNS assurance visit that occurred in November. And QPSA have also heard about that visit too. But we just brought it here again for completeness. And in addition to that, we also brought the review of the NHSE tabletop exercise regarding where the scrutiny
over the three neonatal SIs, just to evidence where that information had been, and to have that benchmark, an assessment that actually they felt that we'd gone through a due process and that everything had been open and transparent. So yeah, as you said, the positive visit. Unless there are any other questions on those bits, I'll skip on to the stillbirth side of things. So again, as Louisa said, we bring everything on a monthly basis, but the January report also covered off the year end. We were really delighted that we had another reduction for 2023, which totally adjusted our rates again. But just for board's information, we know that today the 2022 embrace data is being released. It's 2 years, obviously 2 years behind. And when the 2023 data does come through, there will potentially be another 3 babies added to that list that's been declared. Now, those babies are 3 babies that were under 24 weeks at the time of death, but who weren't born until 24 weeks. And the way that PMRT, that's perinatal mortality review tool, the way that collects data alters that final figure. So essentially, there are things just for clarity, like a 16-week baby that had died, a twin that had died at 16 weeks, that wasn't born until its surviving twin was born, has been stillbirth, but clearly wasn't a stillbirth. That makes sense. So. Yeah, are there any questions really? I know that was very whistle stop given the time pressures there. So yeah, thank you. I've taken time reading through the reports. They're so comprehensive. This is one area with the trust that I'm going to have to put a lot of time into to learn the points. So thank you for your offer to help me on that. Sorry. But I was really impressed by the detail in the reports. Really clear. Now, just to say, in my chief exec's report, right at the top of this meeting, we touched on the outcome of the quality improvement group, and I did say that I wanted to express thanks, particularly Amin's praise for the cooperation demonstrated by everybody on the unit, and particularly in your leadership of attending many discussions and meetings and having to provide lots of evidence to get us to a very satisfactory outcome, which is to say we did things right. And I'm pleased that that's been able to draw a line in that now. So you're here in person. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. So I note in the paper there is a series of recommendations for the board, but the really key one, as you emphasised, Karen, is Sam's presentation at executive and feeding back. So presumably happy with
no problem. Yeah, that's fine. I think the suggestion is twice a year. That's okay.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Any other exceptions would just go through the normal monthly paper. Yeah, okay. So can I just formally ask, is everybody happy with the recommendations that are included in the report? Okay, is that all right for everyone? Okay.
Just thank you to the team. Thank you very much for Alicia for doing this for me. So we twisted your arm in the wind. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, should I leave? Can I leave now? Yeah.
Of course you can. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant, thanks. And if any papers is required from me, do let me know. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay, that's great. Love to come meet you, Alicia.
Thanks, bye.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay,
thanks a lot.
Happy short and sweet.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Right. So just a quick update in this very dynamic rolling picture of today. QC are going to be free to give us feedback at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is be able to complete the whole of our board business by that time. So would it be okay to reconvene at 1:35? Yeah. So if we take a short break now and then be back in the room promptly for 1:35, and we'll get through the rest of our agendas.